Specifically, does it mean specifically, if the Pakistanis attack you tomorrow without provocation, we're going to come to your assistance, help beat up on Pakistan? Or does it mean if there's a Chinese-India conflict in the Himalayas, are we going to back you? I mean, that happened when I was in the State Department in 1986 or 87. And there was a border skirmish between India and China. So I wrote a memo saying, we've got to make up our mind as to who we're going to support in this, or what our policy will be. So the White House heard about it and was very upset with it. So I went over to the White House and talked to them. They said, there's a war, we're going to back China, we're not going to back India. China is more important because China was balancing the Soviet Union. He said, forget about India, what have they done for us lately? So I think that's something you have to think about. And personally, I do not want India to be a flunky ally. I think that would be disastrous for India. And one of the problems that Pakistan has had, and this, when I first met Zia, we had a long discussion about this, is that Pakistan's alliance with the United States actually hurt Pakistan. It helped it to some degree, but also hurt it. So I think we have to think through these terms: ally, friend. What do they mean? When you have a commitment, how far does a commitment go? And I think these are some of the terms we should be talking about. And also talk about contingencies and hypotheticals. Suppose there's a Chinese-Indian naval confrontation. Do we provide intelligence to the Indians or not? What do we do? I think right now we probably would, but again, I don't know the details of this affair. So let me conclude by saying that I don't think American policy has a vision of South Asia. I did 2 pieces with a colleague of mine, Bruce Rydell, at Brookings, and they're both on the Brookings website. And we called for the reimagination of South Asia. And there's a new book out published by McKinsey called Reimagining India. But I think that it has to go beyond India, because India is not South Asia. India is a big chunk of it, but it's not entirely South Asia. So we can't treat India without looking at Pakistan because of Pakistan's military power. And also the fact that China, whether we like it or not, Justwan has made this point in previous books, is a South Asia power. They are here. You allow them to come here. And they took over Tibet. They used Tibet as a base. They're building roads all the way through north of you, all the way to Central Asia, to Europe. And there are railway trains that go out twice a week, filled with consumer goods from China to Europe. It's astonishing what they've done. They bypassed the whole Indian Ocean thing by developing rail power. So, I think it's time to think big time thoughts. What you have to give up, what you have to compromise on to get something. There's no such thing as a free lunch. It's one of the most famous of all American aphorisms. And to expect other countries to...
Questions? Any questions?
Yes.
Sure.
Mr. Cohen, in light of what you've said, why is America still providing weapons to Pakistan? Because these are not weapons that are required for fighting terrorism. They are weapons which are being used to increase their kitty against India. Thank you.
Yeah, is this out?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I don't think that's true. Congress has mandated that the weapons be provided to counter terrorism. DOD, Department of Defense, is instructed to do that. Secondly, the weapons we provide to Pakistan, sell to Pakistan. We don't provide, we sell to Pakistan for money, hard currency. Which, who knows where they get it from. They're friends with deep pockets. So I think that these weapons, this money is in large part payment for using Pakistan as access to Afghanistan. As we pull out of Afghanistan, our dependence on Pakistan is going to decrease. And they're nervous about that because it's a big part of their income. So I think the way you put the question is inaccurate. 15, 20 years ago, I would have agreed with you. But there's always been a debate in Washington as to why we're supporting both sides of an arms race, India and Pakistan. India got the largest single amount of foreign aid of any country in the world. Pakistan got some military. So it's sort of evened out. But I think that the difficulty is that you perceive our relationship with Pakistan in old-fashioned terms. The relationship is being changed. The Raymond Davis affair, other events that have changed the views on both sides. We're coming to a more realistic assessment of what we're doing. The best book on this, and a book that had influence on American thinking, is a book by Ambassador Howard and Terry Seeker called How Pakistan Negotiates with the United States. And it's, I did a preface for it, so I read it very carefully. And the book has in every chapter, I think, has the term lying to describe Pakistan diplomatic behavior. So, Pakistan will say what it has to say, and it will do what it has to do to get American weapons. But I think the Chinese probably have a similar problem. The Chinese problem is complicated by the fact that the Pakistanis are training extremists in Pakistan for Central Asia. Yes, sir.
The lady that plays birds. Yeah, Monica. Just ask.
Professor Cohen, my question to you would be, what according to you are the current American perspectives on Pakistan's relationship with China, especially in the realm of
What, according to you, are the current American perspectives relating to Pakistan's equation with China, especially when it comes to the transfer of sensitive data technology?
Well, for a long time, we said my policy was to look the other way. And I had in my office in the State Department 20 years ago, I had team bundler. So people would come in and ask me, Steve, what about Pakistani nuclear program? Then not much was known about China. So I'd point to the three monkeys and say, see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. That was our policy. We allowed the Pakistanis to go nuclear because they allowed us to operate in Afghanistan. And from a Pakistani point of view, it was a good bargain. They lied about our role, we lied about their weapons technology. But then when the Chinese stepped in, it became clear that some of the technology was coming from China. Administration that was. Wasn't Carter, but it was. I think they should have clamped down on the Chinese. That we gave the Chinese a free run. So to answer your question more specifically, there's some interest in this, but there's hardly anybody with any special knowledge.
Professor Cohen, considering towards Asia, do you think for India's strategic interests, does it make sense for India to partner with democracies like Australia, South Korea, Japan, countries in terms of containing China? Because these are the countries with which China is currently having disputes, especially Japan, the island dispute. Does it make sense for India to partner in some sort of democratic alliance?
Well, the Indians are doing some of this with Vietnam and Japan, but the problem of China is a contingent problem, a future problem. We don't know. We don't know how China's going to turn out. This leadership seems to be more assertive than previous leadership. But India is in a position where it's vulnerable to Chinese pressure. And of course, if India pushes China, China simply increases aid to Pakistan. So it's a balance of power game. The good thing is, ironically, that everybody's got nuclear weapons. So nobody's going to push very hard unless they go crazy. So I think that's why it's a stable relationship, an uneasy relationship. India's power is weakened because of its lack of economic growth and development. From the point of view of the East Asians and Southeast Asians, India's still not moving along economically at all. So how can you take seriously a country that's sort of slow moving economic, led by one of the best economists ever produced by India? It's actually not growing. So India's lack of economic development growth makes it a very unattractive partner for the countries. The democracy thing is interesting, and some Ambassador Minister Kershi talked about that. But again, I don't know how they draw the balance between democracy and security. That's what he said. And if you put it in those large terms, without being specific, you can never be challenged. So I don't know. I know the Americans. Clearly, Japan is a country which is a democracy, which has an alliance with the United States. India is a democracy, has no alliance with the United States whatsoever. But military exercises, which have increased exponentially, are a way of substituting for an alliance. That is, if you need to operate with another country in a military sense or political sense, it's important that your personnel have an understanding how the other country approached the war. A lot of other issues, also migration and so forth. But the book argues to look at normalization, not peace process, but normalization in two ways. One is top-down, where the sort of strategic identity, strategic unification, and that's just one's area. The other is bottom-up, which is intergroutualitarian, people-to-people diplomacy, trade, cricket. I did an article which is on the Brookings website, South Asia in 2060. And so we have 3 futures for South Asia, 2060. Who knows who's going to be around in 2060. The first future was continuation of the present relationship. Hostility between India and its neighbors, no war, no peace. Not getting worse, not getting better. The second future was a breakdown in the order. That is a catastrophic failure of politics and military in India or Pakistan, or both, which led to a war between the two, a significant war. The third possibility, which I like, and the title was my co-author, the United States of South Asia. And this began with an understanding that between them, the Indians, Pakistanis, the Sri Lankans, and Bangladeshis controlled world cricket. And they dominated world cricket. They provided the money for world cricket. They provided the players for world cricket. It's incredible. They really have taken over world cricket. Of course, the Americans are out of this completely. We don't do cricket. And then that led to, and the model, of course, is the European Union. That led to the we didn't call it the we call it the World Mango Association. A meeting of the Bangladeshi, Indian, and Pakistani mango growers to put the stamp of approval on our mangoes instead of the bad foreign mangoes. So that led to functional cooperation in South Asia over issues where all 3 countries had common interest. You could expand that to tourism. There could be a Buddhist tourist trail that would attract Chinese and Japanese and Thais in huge numbers. You can do this in various ways. So that's the optimistic series. By 2060, it's a normalization of South Asia. If you ask me what I'm going to see in the future, I'm not going to live that long. I'm still cautiously pessimistic. I think the region teeters on the edge of disaster and muddling through. And I would say that's okay if it wasn't for what's going to happen in Afghanistan. Again, I'm not an Afghan expert, but I think that my judgment is that as Afghanistan unravels after we pull out, things may move very quickly. It took the previous government, after the Soviets pulled out, they lasted for about a year or 2 or something like that. So you can see a slow motion catastrophe. But this time they will have, the extremists would have claimed, we've defeated the Soviets, now we've defeated the Americans. What's next? I think they will fail because the Pakistanis do not want to become a Taliban state. And there's going to be a bloody civil war in Pakistan. And I think that they should have had that civil war earlier. The army does not want to see a Taliban in Pakistan. But they're kind of shocked by the very people that they were supporting now coming back and attacking with the same ideology.
Right. Thank you very much, sir. Only on a slight lighter note, I remember somebody once telling me that find me a big power and a progressive nation that plays cricket. So, thank you very much for illuminating this audience with, and for allowing them to see you in person. Thanks very much. Ladies and gentlemen, the last session is by yours truly, so if you have the patience, you may like to sit it out, and please thank Professor Stephen Bowen.
It was a pleasure to have you here, Professor Cohen.
I enjoyed being here.
Yeah, so we just wanted to understand how is you feeling being here, because we're talking about ideas of India. So what do you feel about it?
Well, I think there's been a major discussion in the world about the idea of India and also the idea of Pakistan and other countries. And I think it's good for people to examine what they think about their own country and to get the views of others about themselves. So I think that it's been a good meeting for me. I enjoyed it.